Welcome back to Reddit Whispers. 40 years. Think about that for a moment. 4 decades. It's a length of time that feels geological. It's longer than many people's entire adult lives. 40 years is enough time to watch a sapling grow into a towering oak, to see cities rise and fall, to witness the world change in ways you could never have imagined. For me, 40 years was the length of my marriage to Eleanor. It was my life's great work, my masterpiece. We had built an empire together, not of money or power, but of memories. An empire of inside jokes whispered across a crowded room, of shared glances that spoke volumes, of the comfortable, worn-in silence that only comes from knowing another human being as well as you know yourself. Our love wasn't the fiery, passionate inferno of a summer romance. It was an old, banked fire, a deep and steady hearth that warmed every corner of our lives. It was the predictable comfort of her hand finding mine in the dark of a movie theater, the familiar scent of her shampoo on the pillow next to me, the easy rhythm of our lives moving in a comfortable, synchronous orbit. We had raised 2 children, both now grown with families of their own. We had grandchildren whose laughter filled our home on holidays, their sticky fingerprints a welcome graffiti on our clean walls. We had weathered storms together, the death of parents, financial struggles in our early years, the terrifying illnesses that come knocking as you get older. We were a team, a fortress, an unbreakable unit. I believed that with every fiber of my being. I was a man who lived a life of certainty. I was a structural engineer. I dealt in load-bearing walls, in stress tests, in the immutable laws of physics. I built bridges, structures designed to withstand the most incredible forces, to endure for generations. My marriage, I thought, was my greatest and most enduring structure. Its foundations were solid, its framework unshakable. I was wrong. The first crack in that foundation appeared not with a bang, but with a quiet, insidious buzz. It was a Tuesday evening, a night so ordinary it's almost painful to remember. I was reading in the living room, and Eleanor was upstairs getting ready for bed. Her phone, which she had left on the end table, vibrated. I glanced over, thinking it was probably a late-night text from our daughter. But the name on the screen was not one I recognized. It just said M. The message preview was short, but it was enough to stop the world from turning. Can't stop thinking about today. You felt incredible. I stared at the screen, the words blurring into an incomprehensible jumble of letters. It felt like I was trying to read a foreign language. There had to be a mistake, a wrong number, a spam text. My mind, the logical, engineering mind, scrambled for a rational explanation. Because the alternative, the one that was whispering from the darkest corner of my brain, was impossible. It was a violation of the laws of my universe. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling. It wasn't locked. Eleanor had never been one for passwords. We had no secrets. That was the first bitter drop of irony in an ocean of it that was about to drown me. I opened the message thread, and there it was. Not a mistake, not a wrong number. It was a novel, a detailed, explicit account of a secret life my wife was living. Weeks, no months of messages, plans to meet, descriptions of their time together, words of love, of passion, of a connection that I, her husband of 40 years, knew nothing about. They were areas of emotion, filled with the kind of breathless, desperate longing that belonged to teenagers, not to a 63-year-old grandmother. He called her Ellie, a name no one had used for her since she was a girl. She called him her escape. They talked about me. They talked about how I didn't see her, how I took her for granted, how our life was a comfortable, passionless routine. I was a character in their sordid little play, the bumbling, oblivious husband. The pain was a physical thing. It started as a cold dread in the pit of my stomach and then erupted outwards, a white-hot nova of agony that seared every nerve ending. My breath hitched in my chest. I felt like I was having a heart attack. The room began to spin. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears, a frantic, deafening drumbeat.
I scrolled and scrolled, my thumb moving with a will of its own, a masochistic need to see the full extent of the devastation. I saw pictures, selfies of them in a car, their heads close together, smiling. A picture of their hands intertwined on a table at a cafe I didn't recognize. Each image was a new stab wound. These weren't just messages about sex. This was an emotional affair, a full-blown relationship. She had given him a part of herself that I thought belonged exclusively to me. She had shared her thoughts, her dreams, her vulnerabilities with this stranger.
The man, M, I pieced together from the texts was Michael, a man from her art class, a pottery class she had started taking a few months ago, claiming she needed a hobby. I had encouraged it. I had told her it was wonderful that she was trying something new. I had been cheering on the very thing that was destroying me. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. I placed the phone back on the end table, my movements stiff and robotic. I felt a strange, terrifying calm descend upon me, the kind of calm that comes in the eye of a hurricane. The world had just ended, and I was sitting in the quiet rubble. She walked into the room, wrapped in her familiar blue robe, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked at me and smiled, the same warm, loving smile she had given me for 40 years. It was the smile of a stranger, a liar. It was the most grotesque thing I had ever seen. "Ready for bed, love?" she asked, her voice the same gentle melody that had been the soundtrack of my adult life. I couldn't speak. I just looked at her, and in my eyes she must have seen the wreckage. Her smile faltered. "What is it, John? Are you all right? You look pale." I just pointed to the phone, a single trembling finger. She followed my gaze. Her eyes landed on the phone. And in that instant, I watched the woman I had known for 4 decades dissolve before my eyes. The color drained from her face. Her body seemed to shrink, to collapse in on itself. The mask of the loving wife fell away, and what was left was a terrified, guilty stranger. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a silence so profound, it felt like the world had lost its sound. And in that silence, I heard the sound of my life, my beautiful, solid, dependable life, shattering into a million irreparable pieces. 40 years, an empire of memories, all of it turned to dust by a single, quiet buzz in the night. The hours that followed the discovery were a disorienting, surreal nightmare. We didn't scream, we didn't rage. The betrayal was too monumental for that, too fundamentally world-altering. It was like discovering the sky was green. You don't yell at it, you just stare in stunned, silent horror. I retreated to the guest room, a room that had, until that night, been reserved for our visiting grandchildren. It was a room filled with stuffed animals and children's books, a whimsical, innocent space that felt like a cruel mockery of the profound adult ugliness that had just invaded our home. I sat on the edge of the small twin bed, a bed I had assembled myself, and I tried to breathe. Every inhalation was a jagged, painful effort. The image of the text messages was seared onto the inside of my eyelids. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. "You felt incredible. My escape. Ellie." The words looped in my mind, a toxic, endless mantra. I felt a shame so profound it was like a physical weight pressing down on me, crushing the air from my lungs. How had I not known? For months, my wife had been living a double life under my own roof, and I had been completely, blissfully oblivious. Was I that inattentive, that disconnected? The engineer in me started to analyze the structural failure. What had I missed? What were the warning signs I had ignored? The late nights she attributed to her art class. The new, slightly more adventurous clothes she had started wearing. The way she guarded her phone, a device that had once been a communal piece of household equipment. The signs had all been there, small, hairline fractures in the facade of our marriage that I had been too blind, too complacent, too trusting to see.
The shame was soon consumed by a wave of pure, unadulterated rage. It was a cold, hard anger that settled deep in my bones. I wanted to smash something, to break something, to inflict a physical pain that could match the emotional torment that was tearing me apart. I thought about this man, this Michael, this faceless stranger who had waltzed into my life and taken a sledgehammer to it. I imagined his face, his hands on my wife, and my own hands curled into fists. I, a man who had never been in a physical fight in his entire life, was consumed by violent, primal fantasies of revenge. And then there was the grief. It came in waves, a suffocating, black tide that pulled me under. I was mourning the loss of my wife, the woman I thought she was. I was mourning the loss of our shared past, which now felt like a meticulously crafted lie. Every memory was tainted. Our anniversary dinners, our family vacations, the quiet moments of intimacy, were they all a performance? Had she been thinking of him even then? I was mourning the loss of my future, the comfortable, predictable future I had always imagined, growing old together, watching our grandchildren grow up, sitting on the porch in our rocking chairs. That future had been stolen from me. The night was endless. I did not sleep. I just sat there, a ghost in a child's room, as the foundations of my life crumbled into dust. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Eleanor sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked like she had aged 10 years overnight.
She had made coffee, the same way she had every morning for 40 years. The domestic normalcy of the act was so jarring, so insane, that I almost laughed. We didn't speak. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down opposite her. The silence between us was a living entity, a thick, suffocating fog of unspoken accusations and unanswered questions. She was the first to break it. "I am so sorry, John," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Sorry is not a big enough word," I said, my own voice a cold, dead monotone. "There are no words big enough for this." She started to talk, to explain. Her words were a torrent of guilt and self-loathing. She told me she had felt invisible, that our life had become so routine, so predictable, that she had lost herself in it. She said Michael had made her feel seen, had made her feel alive, had made her feel like a woman again, not just a wife, a mother, a grandmother. It was a textbook midlife crisis cliché, and hearing it from her lips didn't lessen the pain, it amplified it. My wife, my unique, incredible Eleanor, had been brought down by the most common, pathetic of human failings. I listened, my face a stony, impassive mask. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask questions. I just let her talk, her words washing over me, each one another small, sharp stone, pelting my already bruised and battered heart. When she was finished, she looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I ended it," she said. "The moment you found out, I sent him a message. I told him it was over, that I had made a terrible, unforgivable mistake. It's you I love, John. It's always been you." I wanted to believe her. A part of me, a desperate, drowning part of me, clung to those words like a piece of driftwood. But the engineer in me, the part that dealt in facts and evidence, knew that trust, once broken, cannot be so easily repaired. "I don't know what to do," I said, and it was the most honest thing I had ever said. And I didn't. My mind was a war zone. One voice, the voice of my pride, of my anger, was screaming at me to leave, to pack a bag, call a lawyer, and burn the whole damn thing to the ground, to walk away with my dignity intact. But another voice, a quieter, more insistent voice, was whispering of 40 years, of the children we had raised, of the home we had built, of the life we had woven together, a tapestry so intricate and complex that to unravel a single thread would be to destroy the entire thing. The days that followed were a cold, silent hell. We were two ghosts haunting the same house, our conversations limited to terse, functional exchanges about bills and groceries. I slept in the guest room. I couldn't bear to be in our bed, the bed that was now a crime scene in my mind.
Every night I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, the same question echoing in the darkness. What now? Do I detonate a bomb that will not just destroy my own life, but the lives of my children and grandchildren? Do I shatter their world, their image of their loving, stable grandparents because of my own pain? Or do I swallow the poison of this betrayal and try to find an antidote? Eleanor, for her part, was a portrait of contrition. She gave me her phone, her passwords, her complete and utter transparency. She offered to quit her art class. She offered to move out to give me space. She wrote me long, rambling letters, filled with apologies and promises. She was a woman desperate to atone, to somehow put the pieces of our shattered life back together. I read her letters. I saw her pain. And it confused me. My anger wanted a villain, a monster. But the woman in front of me was just a person, a flawed, broken person who had made a catastrophic mistake. And I, against all logic, still loved her. Or at least, I loved the woman she had been for the first 39.5 years of our marriage. The decision came to me not in a moment of clarity, but in a moment of profound exhaustion. I was in the backyard watching my grandson, a beautiful, boisterous 4-year-old, chase a butterfly across the lawn. He was the product of our love, of our family, of the life we had built. He was innocent. And the thought of explaining to him one day why Grandma and Grandpa didn't live together anymore, why our family was broken, was a pain I couldn't bear. It was a pain that, in that moment, felt greater than the pain of the betrayal itself. I looked at this little boy, this perfect, innocent life, and I made a choice. It was not a choice born of forgiveness. That felt a million miles away. It was a choice born of love for my family. It was a choice born of a desperate, perhaps foolish hope that a structure that had stood for 40 years, even one with a cracked foundation, was worth trying to save. I walked back into the house, where Eleanor was sitting at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. I sat down opposite her. "I am not ready to forgive you," I said, my voice steady. "I don't know if I ever will be, but I am willing to try. I am willing to see if this bridge can be rebuilt, but it will be on my terms, and it will be the hardest thing we have ever done." A single tear rolled down her cheek, but it was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of a fragile, terrifying hope. And in that moment, our new, uncertain, and painful journey began. The decision to try and rebuild was not a finish line. It was the starting gun for a marathon run on broken glass. The first steps were the most painful, a brutal, necessary excavation of the truth. My terms were simple and non-negotiable. I needed absolute, unvarnished honesty. There could be no more secrets, no more hidden corners of her life. I needed to know everything. Not because I was a masochist, but because I was an engineer. I could not begin to assess the damage to the structure until I knew the full extent of the rot. So we talked. For weeks, we had a series of excruciating conversations that felt like performing surgery on ourselves without anesthesia. I asked the questions I never thought I would ask, the questions that every betrayed spouse both dreads and desperately needs to have answered. When did it start? How many times? Where did you meet? What did you talk about? Did you love him? Every question was a new torment for me, every answer a fresh hell for her to confess. She answered every single one. She didn't hedge, she didn't minimize, she didn't make excuses. She just gave me the ugly, painful truth. She told me about the initial flattery, the thrill of being seen as a desirable woman, the slow slide from innocent friendship to emotional intimacy, and then, finally, to physical betrayal. She admitted that she had allowed herself to believe she was in love with him, a fantasy she now saw as a pathetic and selfish escape from her own insecurities. It was a brutal process. There were times I had to walk out of the room, overwhelmed by a wave of nausea and rage. There were times she broke down, sobbing with a shame so profound it was hard to witness. But we kept going, because we had to. It was the only way to clear the debris. The second part of our reconstruction was professional help. We found a marriage counselor, a woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, who specialized in infidelity. I was skeptical at first. The idea of bearing my soul, our soul, to a stranger felt like another violation. But I was a drowning man, and I was willing to grab on to any lifeline. Our sessions with Dr. Sharma were our controlled demolition site. She created a safe space where we could talk about the unspeakable. She gave us a language to understand what had happened. She helped me see that while Eleanor was 100% responsible for her choice to have an affair, I was not entirely without responsibility for the climate in our marriage that had made her vulnerable to it. This was the hardest pill for me to swallow. I had been the victim. I was the one who had been loyal. But as we peeled back the layers of our 40-year marriage, I began to see the subtle ways in which I had contributed to the distance between us.
I had become complacent. I had assumed our love was a self-sustaining engine that didn't require fuel. I had stopped courting my wife. I had started to see her as a permanent, comfortable fixture in my life, like a favorite armchair, rather than as the vibrant, complex woman she was. It was not an excuse for what she did. Dr. Sharma was very clear about that, but it was an explanation. And understanding that explanation was a crucial step in moving forward. It shifted the dynamic from one of a simple villain and victim to one of two flawed human beings who had both, in different ways, failed their marriage. The biggest challenge, of course, was rebuilding trust. Trust is not a switch you can just flip back on. It's a painstaking, brick-by-brick process. Eleanor worked tirelessly to lay those bricks. She gave me complete access to her phone, her email, her social media. She called me from her art class just to check in. She changed her schedule so that she was home when I was home. She did everything she could to make her life an open book. But the demon of suspicion is a powerful one. In the early months, I was a detective in my own home. I would check her phone when she was in the shower, my heart pounding with a mixture of shame and fear. I would analyze every word she said, looking for inconsistencies, for hidden meanings. If she was 5 minutes late coming home from the grocery store, my mind would immediately leap to the worst-case scenario. It was exhausting for both of us. It was a prison of my own making. And I realized that if we were ever going to be free, I had to make a conscious choice to start trusting her again. It was a leap of faith. It was a decision to believe that the woman who was working so hard to save our marriage was the real Eleanor, and the woman who had betrayed me was a temporary aberration. It was a choice I had to make every single day. Some days were easier than others. There were days when we would fall into our old, easy rhythm, when we would laugh at a shared joke, and for a few blissful moments, I would forget. And then there were the bad days. Days when a song on the radio, a scene in a movie, or a random thought would trigger the memory of the betrayal, and the anger and pain would come roaring back as if it had happened yesterday. On those days, Eleanor was a rock. She didn't get defensive. She didn't tell me to get over it. She just sat with me in my pain. She would let me rage, she would let me cry, and she would apologize again for the 100th time. Her patience, her unwavering willingness to absorb my pain was the balm that slowly began to heal my wounds. We started to create new memories, to overwrite the corrupted files of our past. We took a trip, just the two of us, to a place we had never been before. We started a new hobby together, taking ballroom dancing lessons, a clumsy, comical experience that forced us to learn how to move together again, to trust each other's lead. We were not just repairing the old structure, we were adding new wings, creating new spaces that belonged only to the new version of us. There was no single moment when I knew I had forgiven her. It wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was a slow, gradual dawning, like a sunrise. It was the realization one morning that I had woken up and she was the first person I wanted to talk to, not the source of my first painful thought. It was the moment I saw her playing with our grandchildren and felt not a flicker of resentment, but a wave of profound love and gratitude. It was the day I realized that I had stopped checking her phone, not because I was forcing myself to, but because I simply didn't feel the need to anymore.
The trust, once a fragile seedling, had grown back, not as the naive, unquestioning trust of our youth, but as something stronger, more resilient, a trust that had been tested by fire and had survived. Forgiveness, I learned, is not about forgetting. I will never forget what happened. The scar is there, a permanent part of the landscape of our marriage, but it no longer hurts to the touch. It's just a reminder of how close we came to losing everything and how hard we fought to get it back. The life we have now is not the life we had before the affair. That life, with its comfortable certainties and its naive, unbroken trust, is gone forever. To pretend otherwise would be a lie. What we have built in its place is something different. It's something quieter, more deliberate, and in many ways more honest. Our marriage is no longer an unconscious habit. It's a conscious choice. Every single day, we wake up and we choose each other. We choose to continue the hard work of connection. We choose to nurture the fragile, resilient thing we have rebuilt from the rubble. There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi, where they repair broken pottery by mending the cracks with lacquer mixed with powdered gold.
The philosophy behind it is that the object is more beautiful for having been broken. The cracks are not something to be hidden. They are a part of the object's history, a testament to its survival. That's what our marriage feels like now. It's a piece of kintsugi pottery. The golden seams of our repair are visible. The memory of the break is always there, but it no longer defines us. Instead, it's a part of our story, a reminder that something can be shattered and still be whole. That something broken can be put back together and become even stronger and more precious than it was before. The irony is that in many ways, our relationship is better now. The complacency is gone. I don't take Eleanor for granted anymore. I see her. I make a conscious effort to connect with her, to listen to her, to be the partner she needs. And she, in turn, is more open, more communicative than she has ever been. The affair, as terrible as it was, forced us to have conversations we should have had 20 years ago. It forced us to confront the hairline cracks that had been forming for decades, cracks we had both been content to ignore. We had to demolish the faulty parts of our foundation and rebuild them with stronger, more honest materials. I no longer think about the other man. In the beginning, he was a constant, shadowy presence in my mind. But over time, he has faded into irrelevance. He was not the cause of our problem. He was a symptom of it. He was a temporary actor in our long and complex story, and his part is over. My forgiveness of Eleanor extended, eventually, to myself. I had to forgive myself for my blindness, for my complacency, for my role in the emotional distance that had grown between us. I had to accept that I was not a perfect husband, just as she was not a perfect wife. We were just two imperfect people, trying to navigate a long and complicated life together. Our children know that we went through a difficult time. We never told them the details.
That is our burden to carry, not theirs. But they have seen the change in us. They have commented on how we seem closer now, more connected. And in that, there is a quiet, bittersweet victory. They see the strength of the repaired structure, even if they don't know the story of the earthquake that almost brought it down. Sometimes, when we're sitting on the porch in the evening watching the sunset, a comfortable silence will settle between us. And in that silence, I'll look over at her, at the familiar lines on her face, the silver in her hair, and I'll feel a wave of emotion that is no longer anger or pain. It's a complex cocktail of love, history, sadness, and a deep, profound gratitude. I am grateful for her courage to face her own ugliness. I am grateful for her patience in enduring my rage. I am grateful for her unwavering commitment to the grueling work of rebuilding. And I am grateful for my own capacity to forgive, a capacity I never knew I had. Forgiveness, I've learned, is not a gift you give to someone else. It's a gift you give to yourself. It's the act of freeing yourself from the prison of bitterness. It's the decision to not let a past wound define your future. It was not the easy path. The easy path would have been to walk away. The harder path was to stay, to fight, to face the demons head on, and to try to build something new from the wreckage. It was a long, arduous, and painful journey, and there were many times I thought we wouldn't make it. But as I sit here now, 45 years after we first said I do, with the woman I have chosen to love again and again, I know, with a certainty that is deeper and more real than any I have ever known, that it was the right path. Our bridge did not collapse. The foundations cracked, the structure was shaken to its core, but we rebuilt it, and it is strong enough to carry us to the end of our days. Thanks for staying until the end. Now I want to ask you, what was the moment you realized your world wasn't what you thought it was? Share your thoughts in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe to Reddit Whispers.